Hello everyone, my name is Enrique and welcome once again to Star Wars Sequel Month. And oh boy, this movie is really bad. Now, I had to admit, I was trying to figure out why everybody was not liking The Last Jedi, why everybody had problems with it, but I also saw the good side that many people had in regards to this movie. I saw some arguments. I saw people just discussing what they like, what they got out of the movie. And yeah, there's a lot of things that you can talk about The Last Jedi, whether it's good or bad. But this one, Rise of Skywalker, is many things, but good is not one of them. And unfortunately, I have to talk about it because this is something that a lot of people have a lot of gripes towards. This is the first Star Wars film that not only damaged the franchise beyond recognition, but it stopped other movies to come out in the Star Wars universe. So yeah, this is infamous for all the wrong reasons. This tried to placate all the fans in the world, making them happy, and ended up doing none of the above. And this is something that exemplifies how the direction of a movie can be destroyed or torn apart when you don't have a constructed plan. And this will haunt Kathleen Kennedy to the day she dies. But it's one thing to talk about it, let's just review it already. Now, before I get into the movie itself, I think it's only fair that I talk about the Colin Trevorrow version. This was one of the drafts that they were planning into for Rise of Skywalker, although they had it a different name. In fact, it was called Duel of Fates, and they had a different sort of character progression and story for the rest of the film. We saw Rey get into a romance with Poe. We saw how Kylo Ren was starting to learn about the methods of the dark side in order to heal himself. We got more of a prominent role for Finn in the final battle. We get to see Coruscant again, and a lot of interesting plot lines that they never got to develop. And I have to imagine that these were the first steps for the film. But it had a sort of ending, and we're gonna get into those as the film progresses. But yeah, despite that, they decided to not only fire Colin Trevorrow, but also replace him with the writer Chris Terrio. Now, if you don't know who Chris Terrio is, he's a prominent writer in Hollywood, but he also won an award for his adapted script. He, in fact, won a script for his role into the film Argo from 2012. And he was also the man responsible for writing, or at the very least, do the rewrites for Batman and Superman Dawn of Justice. So yeah, not exactly a good reputation for him. I mean, he's a good writer, but unfortunately this type of writings are pretty much not good for the fan base. Regardless though, we also saw the return of J.J. Abrams after the backlash of The Last Jedi. But now that I explained everything about the Trevorrow version and everything that happened afterwards, what happens in the film? Well, sit back and just brace yourself, because what I'm about to tell you, it's pretty painful. If you saw one of the memes that were created from Rise of Skywalker, then you probably heard this one. Somehow, Palpatine returns. Yeah, Darth Sidious, Emperor Palpatine, returns from the dead, and we don't know how or why, but he has returned, and he has become the final boss in this movie, and many people believe that from the entire saga. Which is wrong, but I'm gonna get into that later. Regardless of that, Kylo wants to kill him, but then Palpatine offers him all these starships and ships from the Empire so he can invade the galaxy and conquer it on behalf of him. And I don't know, things that it's just complicated. Anyway, our heroes, Rey, Finn, and Poe, trying to figure out how to stop Palpatine. In fact, they trying to go into a scavenging hunt in order to find where the planet he is inhabiting in. which is Hexagon, but they don't know how, so it becomes pretty much a scavenger adventure. Then we along the way learn things about Rey, we learn things about Kylo, stuff happens, action, drama, comedy. And if this sounds like a very vague description of the film, trust me, it's not as vague as I describing it, because all of this is just so bad that I'm basically describing you what happens and how everything is just so lame and lifeless. And that's one of the problems from this writing. The story is pretty much a scavenger hunt in order to find the planet where the Emperor is and kill him. No musts, no buts, nothing more or less. Just that. They simplify it, but not in an exciting way, but more in a, we have to do it kind of way, because people didn't like The Last Jedi. And that sentiment is felt around the fan base, because man, this was just lame to see. I mean, we don't get enough excitement from this film. I'm argue that it's even worse than Phantom Menace, because at least in Phantom Menace, for all its problems, it had some excitement, it had some character development. Although I'm being unfair, of course, because I don't know, it's hard to say which one is worst, Rise of Skywalker or the Phantom Menace. But regardless of that, it feels like this movie is going through the motions. Like they have to do this film in order to placate the fans, because the last one didn't pan so well critically. It was good with the critics, but not for the general audiences. So yeah, we are left on what the hell we're going to do. They were left with returning the director J.J. Abrams to helm the last one, since everybody liked The Force Awakens. So he thought, okay, I'm gonna direct this one and see how it goes, maybe change some things that people didn't like, so everybody can be happy. And that didn't help. All the story is pretty much what we heard in past Star Wars films. Everything, like I said, the chases, the action, it doesn't feel as brand new as everything. And it has some pretty terrible choices in how they handle the story that, yeah, is gonna affect the characters itself. But I think it's only fair that I talk about what happens with the characters. One that I didn't want to talk about, but I have to do it because the actress who passed away deserves a lot better than this. So here's my retrospective into the characters of Rise of Skywalker, starting with Carrie Fisher, playing as Leia Organa. So we all know what happened. In 2016, Carrie Fisher passed away after a long fight battle with a lot of body issues. She had diseases throughout the years, and this was the final result. Now, Carrie Fisher filmed The Last Jedi while she was having these conditions, and she put a good performance. And unfortunately, in this one, because Carrie was no longer there, they decided to use computer generated animation on her face, use a body double, and just film scenes with her, recreating some of the pictures that they acquired not only from the Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, but from also previous films. They had to digitally insert Carrie Fisher into this film so they could give her a send-off. And let me tell you, it was just as awkward as watching it as it is me describing it, because Carrie Fisher, if she was alive today, I don't think she would have wanted her character to be alive in digital form, because it breaks some ethical barriers and it causes some problems that are still discussing to this day. You get the deal. But yeah, this whole thing was just awkward. So why am I mentioning Leia? I didn't mention her previously in The Force Awakens and Last Jedi, because if I was not mistaken, all three films were focusing on some previous characters from the original trilogy. Force Awakens was focusing a little bit on Han Solo, his regret about his son and his marriage towards Leia, and all the decisions that he had until his death. Then we saw Luke, in which he had the same feelings, only it was letting himself be afraid of Kylo's power and dark side, that he was thinking of attacking him, all that, and that he, just like Han Solo, he dies. I believe this was going to be the same thing with Carrie Fisher's character of Leia Organa, because Leia was the last one of the trio of the original trilogy, that maybe she was going to make one last effort into redeeming Kylo, and something happens, and along the way she sacrifices herself in order to, I don't know, stop the First Order or redeem Kylo. I'm not sure. I haven't read the Trevorrow script. I don't know if that was the intention, but judging Kathleen Kennedy's decisions into pushing women into main star roles, I highly doubt it. But in my head, it wouldn't make sense. Leave the last piece of the original trilogy behind, except for Chewbacca, C-3PO, and R2-D2, because everybody loves them and they offer a lot of levity to this film. But yeah, that was the intention. But this was unexpected with the death of Carrie Fisher. Everything had to be rewritten, and they decided to digitally insert her. So the story was, if I'm not mistaken, that she was regretting everything. That her separation from Han, letting her son, to be seduced by the dark side, that she couldn't be able to get the resistance together, things like that. Like, she has been fighting all this time without a break, and she doesn't know what to do anymore. And my guess is the last effort that she was going to do is sacrifice herself to allow the new characters to stop the First Order. And at least that's what I think it would have happened. But we don't know. We don't know, and we probably never will. But yeah, in this case, the idea was that Leia was training Rey in order to harm her skills. They started to explain why Leia didn't become a Jedi, and yeah, in the end, she unfortunately passes away. So the reason all this that I'm mentioning is important to me is because, in my opinion, Carrie Fisher was wonderful as Leia Organa. She was so badass, so confident, and so humble at the same time, that she had this hope that the Empire will fall down, and that happened in the First Order. She was also into a general position, and she was going to find a way to stop the First Order, even though she will die in the battle. But like I said, in this case, because this is more of a digital insert in the character, like the actress, it was no longer there, so they had to put her there with AI, just make things awkward and just lifeless. I mean, kudos to the creators and the producers and the actors. They were trying their best to give Leia a send-off, but I feel like there could have been better ways to do so. In my opinion, I would have just killed Leia in The Last Jedi. I know this would have been too much with Luke gone and Leia gone, but if you want to make this about the newer cast, then you have to let the others, be put aside or die in a heroic effort. Leia just passes away because she was using her force to redeem Kylo, and I don't know, it's a hard explanation and get into in a moment, but yeah, there's not much that I can say to her. I mentioned Leia in this moment because I didn't do it in the last videos. So yeah, the whole progression that she had, still leading a resistance to fight the First Order, the regret of losing her son, the regret of losing Han and Luke, and just be in this battle for so long with no breaks. Yeah, it took a toll on her, and I imagine that that was going to be the last effort to really put everything into one last shot. I just wish that the actress was alive to do so and not used as an AI, stunt double. But that's all I can say. Still, throughout these two movies that she was before, she was wonderful, she was great and badass, and she was so much of a voice of wisdom that I really feel bad that she's no longer with us. But hey, that's just life. I will say this: her daughter Billy, she's in all three movies, and I'm glad that she got us a prominent role in this franchise because, man, I mean, working alongside your mother in a Star Wars film, that's gonna be cathartic for her. But yeah, very tragic, and I feel bad that she's no longer with us. Now let's talk about her son, Kylo Ren, played by Adam Driver. So we all know his story here, that now that he found the Emperor, now he is looking for a way to not only get rid of him, but also to lead the army across the galaxy and conquer it. But unfortunately, as the movie progresses, they wanted to redeem Kylo, and well, that ended up happening. So yeah, it's basically the film going through the motions of trying to conquer the galaxy, but then realize that what he was doing is wrong, and he became just another redeemed character. I will say before I get into my gripes to this character that Adam Driver is still the best part of these films. No exception here. He does add a lot of gravitas and dramatic scenes. He's still a good fighter and an intimidating force. And trust me, if I had it my way, I wouldn't redeem Kylo. But that gets us to the problem of this film. Kylo Ren shouldn't have been redeemed. We all know this. Everybody has argued with it, and it's very true. I mean, why would you want to redeem Kylo? After everything that he has done in The Force Awakens and Last Jedi, after killing his own father, after destroying entire planets, torture Rey, and even kill the Supreme Leader Snoke to take over, why would you want to redeem yourself? This guy didn't care about switching sides. This guy cared about his own goals, his own agenda. He was such an intricate character about not letting the light side corrupt him in his eyes and allow the dark side to take him over. This guy didn't care about becoming good or bringing order to the galaxy. He wanted to be the only ruler, do things his own way and not let anybody stand in his way. So why do we have to make him a good guy at the end? Because it feels like just retreading the Return of the Jedi for no good reason other than to, make people believe that this is the original trilogy and everybody will be happy, which was not going to work. And they failed miserably. Not make things any better when we learn that now they are starting to have a romantic relationship with Rey. Yeah, that happens in this film. It all culminates in the end, but trust me, it really, really happens in this film, and it's so quick and so unearned that you feel nothing about it. This was just such a character assassination for a villain that could have been like the final boss for the entire trilogy. They just shunned him aside for no one, and that was such a wrong move. And speaking of wrong moves, let's talk about Paul Dameron, played by Oscar Isaacs. Now, in this film, instead of taking over as the leader of the resistance, he's just there going through adventures, trying his best to see where his hex go alongside Finn and Rey, trying to figure out what plans are they come to stop the First Order from rising. We get some romantic implications with a character called Zoe, who's played by Kerry Russell, by the way. And I mean, let me think, if you want me to say or to how sum up the character of Paul in this film, it's just his story is about nothing. Like, you don't see a progression of his character. You don't see him becoming the leader of the resistance. At least that's what I saw. But I mean, there are scenes in which he feels regret, like he doesn't know how to do this, and there were moments in which he was leading, but other than that, we don't see, any emotional turmoil for him. Like, the pressure of leading the resistance into a fight is getting into him, like they were implying to do in The Last Jedi, and it was all for none. I mean, Paul Dameron deserved a lot better, and we didn't get any. It's still well acted. I mean, Oscar Isaacs is still a charming, charismatic actor, and he's doing a lot with the character here and with the material he's given into. But other than that, we don't get anything else from him. We don't get any more. We don't learn about the character anymore, and we feel like we are in a hole or in a rut. I don't know. It's just my opinion. But as much as I dislike what they did with Poe in this film, that is nothing compared to the other two. In this case, Finn, played once again by John Boyega. Just like Poe, his characterization here, it's just about nothing. And let me put you into perspective. The characterization that they had planned for Finn in the Trevorrow version was him becoming the leader of the resistance, or at the very least, the liberator for all the stormtroopers, figuring out how to rally all those defective ones into his side and leading a charge into the First Order. That was great. In here, as a Finn fan, it was just heartbreaking. The guy just doesn't say anything that interesting. He doesn't do much in terms of story. He just tries to tell something to Rey, whether it's about, oh, I love you, or something like that. No, it just having to interrupt moment after moment after moment. He's just there along the way. He encounters another effective stormtrooper, like, okay, what happened to you? How did you defect? How did you overcome that program? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. All he does in the film is just scream Rey, or run, or go into battles, or crack one-liners, and just riding space horses in the final act. Oh my god, it's so painful to even describe it. I really feel bad for not only the character of Finn, but also for the actor, John Boyega. He was so disappointed about this character that he vent his frustrations on the media. And let me tell you, if you've seen John Boyega in acting before or outside of it, you will know that the guy deserved better than that. Disney screw up, whoever was in charge screw up immensely. And if I had it my way, I would have made Finn the main character. But boy, if you think what happened to Finn was even worse, what they did to Rey? Oh god. But yeah, let's talk about Rey, played once again by Daisy Ridley. So throughout the film, we see her story. We saw that she was trying to hone her skills in the Force, how to wield a lightsaber, still having conflict inside. But here's when things go off the rails. Throughout the journey, throughout this entire running time of the film, as she's starting to discover things about Hexagol, about where the Emperor is, we learn by Kylo Ren that in fact she wasn't a nobody. That actually her parents sold her away to protect her, in quotations marks. They tried to put her away from the First Order. Why? Because turns out that Emperor Palpatine, Darth Sidious, was her granddaughter. Guys, this was just bad. You made a character that was essentially trying to be built up as somebody who willed the Force willingly, that had no connections with any of the previous characters, only for this film to say no, she was the daughter of someone important, and worst of all, she was the granddaughter of Emperor Palpatine. Like, what? Like, who thought this was a good idea? Who thought that making Rey into a Palpatine was somehow great. Like this was some grand illusion, that this was some grand plan that came from the beginning. I mean, by God, I could accept Snoke if he was Darth Plagueis in some point. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea, but I would have bought it. But this? There are so many things that a lot of people have said over the years. How did Palpatine get a granddaughter? Or how the hell did Palpatine stay alive after the events of Return of the Jedi? Like, how did all of this happen? But in the end, it doesn't matter. And this brings me to a lot of the things that comes wrong. That all the wrong things that happen in this film, focusing on Rey. So, look, Daisy Ridley is a wonderful act. It's no exception here, and just like John Boyega and Oscar Isaacs, she's doing a lot with the material she is giving it to. But here, they don't do so well. They make the character into someone who is allied or connected, at least in a sort of way, to the evil bad guy that caused a lot of damage in the past. And there is no explanation. We don't even learn why she is the granddaughter. Who was her father? And yeah, I know, expanded universe in comics, they probably explain that a lot better. But we don't watch comics or TV shows, not all the time at least. Not everybody's a Star Wars fan. We only watch the movies. And people who watch the movies will want an explanation of how this happened. Where did she come from? How did she came to be? These things, when you establish them in the movie, you have to explain them in the movie. Or at the very least, build it up somewhere in the past when you're making a franchise like this and trying to imply all this happened because of this, and then at the end, it connects the dots. That's how film works. But in here, it was just thrown the last minute, all to placate the fans for The Last Jedi. And here's the thing that really screws things up. Kathleen Kennedy was making a big deal that women in Star Wars should be the main leads. But the problem is, from that standpoint, from that perspective, when she was trying to do and connected it with Palpatine, it just implies that she comes from a bloodline that is even worse. The Skywalkers, yeah, they made some damage, but the Palpatines are not better. And there is no explanation of how this happened. And just makes Rey look like even a worse character. It was already in the fans' eyes, but it's even worse now because she's just connected to an evil bad guy. And yeah, the character of Rey is going through the motions and trying to figure out how to not be connected with Palpatine despite being the granddaughter. I get that. It was supposed to be the culmination of her realizing that she was going to be her own character. But none of that matters when you have it connected to someone who shouldn't be there in the first place and just make her into a powerful force wielder connected to Palpatine. It's just stupid. It's just stupid. It's so stupid. I'm sorry. It's just really infuriating. Not how it matters when she also has to be kissing lips with Kylo Ren in the end. And just overall, you just wonder why the hell this even happened. I really feel bad for Daisy Ridley in this film because, let me put it to you this way. Daisy Ridley, when she was starting to make Star Wars films, she disconnected herself from social media because she couldn't handle all these stressful thoughts and comments about her, about the character she was playing at, and she just wanted to be away from that, trying to go back to the roots of her being, just a good actress, trying to do good roles and all that. But man, this thing didn't help matters in her career, and right now she's trying to be absent from that Hollywood limelight, or at the very least trying to make movies that make her look like a respected actress and not just be, Star Wars connected, to be her own thing. And the worst part is that, man, some fans will never let go. They will always have some gripes and reservations towards the character and the actress who plays it. It's no better than what happened to Jake Lloyd or what happened to Ahmed Best when he played Jar Jar. All this was just a mess that the writers, directors, creators, they should have learned better, and instead they just throw us this at the last minute just to make everybody happy. And that didn't work. So, with all that said, let's talk about production design and effects. They're still good. The standards that we are expecting in these films, they still put the effort into the production of the places, the prosthetics of the aliens, the cinematography, and the effects they have for the ships, for the space, for all the other stuff they have created. It's no exception here. But then we have a problem, which is the action sequences. Now, let me just say this. The problem here in this film is not the effects, it's not the production. The problem here is how they shot, like the execution. Everything looks so gray, so dark, and so moody that you feel like you're watching nothing more than a very, very claustrophobic film. Like, you don't see very much well about the action sequences. When they shot it in the dark, it's really hard to focus on things. You don't see very much about this, and it makes you feel like you don't understand what the hell's going on. The action and the effects are just pretty standard and not interesting. We get scenes of the stormtroopers flying into space. Oh yeah, they fly now. That's a thing that they say in this film, and it's just as underwhelming as you can think of. Yeah, but yeah, the action sequences are not exactly good. They're just standard, not very interesting to look at. The final act of this film just very claustrophobic. You don't make up what the hell's going on other than ships going to space, fighting bad guys, Rey, Kylo fighting the Emperor, something like that. I don't know, just standard stuff that we have come to expect, and nothing that interesting. Hell, if we since I'm speaking about the last act of this film, yeah, this was the infamous scene in which all the Force ghosts from the past are trying to motivate Rey into defeating the Emperor once again. And the reason you don't see those is because they use their voices. It's because of some thing that they wanted to do, because China didn't like ghosts. Like, they trying to release this into all around the world. China didn't like to see ghosts in the film, and they remove it and just put it in voiceovers. So yeah, not very interesting, and I'm not gonna get into the politics of that because it's just not my thing. But now let's talk about my last problem with this film. Palpatine should have never ever returned. Palpatine, it's one of those things that this guy should have never returned for this franchise, for this sequel. We saw what happened to him last time. He fell into a hole, he exploded, and that was it. He was destroyed forever by Darth Vader. He was no longer a problem. Then you brought him back for this one. Why? Why? How? Because they got rid of Snoke. They needed to put someone that they knew instead. So they thought, hey, let's put Emperor Palpatine here, and let's just trying to run and see what happens, instead of analyzing the decisions and say, you know what, maybe this is not a good idea. And a lot of fans are going to be really pissed off because they're not going to understand what the hell happened, how the hell the Emperor Palpatine came back, and why should we even care why he's here. And let me just say this for the record. Ian McDiarmid is a wonderful, wonderful actor. He made the Emperor something that we enjoy watching. His devotion of chewing the scenery, about making himself looking like the most evilest evil bad guy, and just trying to manipulate every angle, all to conquer the galaxy, which he did so in the past, but then now he's back here, and we don't know why or how or why we even care. But yeah, the character of Palpatine was wasted here. only serve as not only exposition, but also it feels like it also a slap in the face for the original trilogy. It almost makes the Return of the Jedi feel pointless because Vader was trying so hard to bring order to the galaxy. He requires his son. He meets his son. The Emperor is telling him that he needs to take over. And then Darth Vader, realizing that he was in the wrong, or at the very least that he was about to lose his son to the Emperor, decides to one last ditch effort to throw him out the hole in the Death Star. Now he's coming back. How did he come back? We don't know. How did he acquire all this tech to create Snoke and all that? We don't know. This is one of those things that you really feel just in the dark about it, because you don't know what the hell just happened. You don't know why the Emperor came back. Like, we are always gonna have to recur in the Emperor for these kind of things. You know that Ian McDiarmid is not eternal, right? The actors died. That not always we're gonna go back to the well of, oh, if this doesn't work, we're just gonna throw the Emperor at the last minute and maybe he'll come back. That's not gonna work. And if they ever make a Star Wars film in the future, boy, I hope they don't go back to the well once again. Because, yeah, this whole thing about bringing the Emperor back with no explanations and no reason whatsoever, I feel like I'm repeating a lot of things here, but it only is because it makes me baffle of how or why we got to this point. How the hell did a movie franchise that was so beloved by so many ended up at this bottom? And that's what it is. And that is the entire review, or at the very least the entire sum up of Rise of Skywalker. What should have been the emotional finale that we come to expect for this franchise. The characters realizing things, or at the very least changing in ways in which makes them better or worse. And we could have an epic conclusion to this story, leading up to the future, leaving two characters that might take over. We don't get that anymore, because this film pretty much crushed that. And let me tell you, this was one of the few things that a lot of fans are just angry about. And let me tell you, Star Wars fans always hold grudges no matter what. Time might heal wounds in time, but this one I don't see be healed anytime soon. And it hasn't for the last few years. It's been what, like 6 years, 7 years since we got The Last Jedi, and people are still not over it. And I don't expect them to be over it, because it's just terrible. It was one of those things that you have to say, why did the filmmakers make those decisions? Why did this direction have to be this way? Why can we enjoy Star Wars? And there's your reason. Rise of Skywalker might not be as infuriating as The Last Jedi, but it was a symptom that culminated of a lot of wrong decisions. Decisions that could have been great, and you just realize that was not for the best. And who can we blame for this? We can blame on Disney for allowing this to happen, for nobody to step up and say this doesn't make sense. We can blame it on Kathleen Kennedy for pushing her agenda, so for making decisions that did not serve the story very well. We can blame it on J.J. Abrams, we can blame it on Chris Terrio or whoever, but at the end, what's the point? We can blame on all people all we want. Hell, we can blame ourselves for complaining about The Last Jedi and just forcing them to change things. But what's the point? At this rate, I don't think I have the space to hate on Rise of Skywalker. What could have been something great, it ended up being something even not up to standards, all I'll say. But in the back of my mind, as I'm reviewing this, as I'm explaining this to you, was there a way to fix all this? Could it be, rewritten in a way that could have been serviceable for people, or at the very least inspiring? well, tune in for the last video of Star Wars Sequel Month. Because instead of a review, I'm probably going to tell you what exactly I would have done have I been the one in charge. But until then, what do you guys think of the Rise of Skywalker? Did you love it, hate it? Let me know in the comment section below. Until then, I've been Enrique and I'll see you next time. Peace.